You're listening to LVB Podcast Show with your friend, advocate, and host, Alvaro.
Hi and welcome to LVB Show. My name is Alvaro and I'm very happy to be with you today. Before I introduce our guest, I want to say thank you so much to people listening from around the world, including the United States, Canada, Australia. We have listeners in Africa, in Europe, in Latin America, of course. And I want to say today's interview is very exciting for me. As you know, I have been doing this podcast for almost 11 years now. I have been also in the past working on radio here in Colombia. I did for 6 months, work on one of the biggest radio stations in the country. And when I listened to Michael Golder, our next guest, I was very excited to learn that he's blind and he does this radio show from Florida that many people in the blind community listens to. And they also stream live the radio show. So I think it's super exciting to have Michael on from the Blind and Beyond radio show. Michael, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Michael. And the first question that comes to mind is, what's the cause of your blindness?
What's the cause of my blindness? That's very interesting. Well, it changed my life drastically. Before I was blind, I was sighted for 65 years of my life. And it happened suddenly. Snap your fingers and you're blind. That fast, that suddenly. I knew nothing about what was coming. It happened to me unaware of anything. Bing, bang, bing, you're blind. I was president and CEO of a clothing manufacturing company, making suits and dress shirts for many years. And when I went blind, I became a leopard in the industry I was in because all the banks, everybody ran away from me because they thought I could not run a clothing manufacturing company when I was blind, because I was the main person in the creating and developing and marketing of the product. So when I was blind, I had to leave the industry, and I did not know anything what I was going to do. And my wife answered an ad in a newspaper from a radio station that was looking for a salesperson. So I answered the ad, and when I went to the station, they looked at my resume and they thought I was overqualified, but they hired me on the spot. And when I spoke to the owner of the station who was hiring me, I said to him, "Do you realize I'm blind?" And he said, "Michael, I couldn't care less about your eyes. I care about your mouth. Can you talk? That's the question. Can you talk?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Well, that's all I need is your mouth. Don't need your eyes, just need your mouth." So he hired me and I became his top salesperson. Everything was going great. And one day, something happened in the studio, in the radio station. Two fellows, young fellows, were criticizing me because I was blind, knocking me because of my cane, knocking me because it takes them, they said, 20 minutes to do something that takes me, I'm sorry, I'll reverse it. It takes me 20 minutes to do something that they could do in 30 seconds. And they knocked me. And what happened was they didn't realize that they were on the air. The mics were open.
Oh, wow.
And what happened was it did not go outside in the public, just internally. When I happened to mention things that they said and the owner verified what was said, they fired the two people on the spot. And then he said to me, "Michael, what can I do for you?" I said, "I would like to go on the air and talk about blindness. I think the sighted people should know about blindness." He said, "I'll tell you what, I got 3:00 open on Saturdays. Get me a sponsor and you can go on the air. So I happened to call up Budweiser. I called Budweiser, the beer people,
Right.
and they sponsored the show. And from there, what happened was the show was very successful. And we went on from 1 hour. Then a couple months later, we went to 2 hours. And then I got this idea, why don't I go into more and more radio stations around the country? So I started doing my own syndication by calling up radio stations and telling them what I was willing to pay, because there's no such thing as free airtime. You have to pay for everything.
Right.
So I was wheeling and dealing with the different radio stations around the country. And within 6 months, I had 10 different radio stations: Boston, Philadelphia, New York, different major cities on the East Coast, primarily Atlanta. And my next goal was to start going to Midwest and West Coast. Well, what happened was I got cancer. And having cancer, I had to get off the air. And the doctor wanted me to go every day for treatments. So for the next 2 years, I was battling cancer. Thank God I beat the cancer. And then what happened was I decided after I beat the cancer, I want to come back on the radio, but I want to come back on the radio and build a national radio show up with syndication, and at the same time, go nonprofit. Because the first time we were a profit, my next time is going to be nonprofit. And I also want to get, my goal was to get a big percentage of our listening audience sighted folks, not just blind folks, but sighted folks. So that's what we did. And that was latter part of 15. So we've been on the air now. April will be 7 years that we've been on the air with Blind and Beyond radio show.
Wow, what a great story, Michael. The first thing I want to say for our listeners is what you're doing is important for the community, because you say, I remember I listen to your show when I can on Sundays nights at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I remember hearing you saying this is like a bridge between the sighted and the blinded community. And I like that a lot, because I feel that sometimes, and I say that because in my family, they say that. They say, why sometimes the blind try to have their own place, but they don't go into the whole, social world. And you need to be careful in that regard. They say in my family, Michael, because because they say, it's wonderful that you raise awareness about blindness, but
that's what we talk about. That's what we talk about all the time on the show. Every day, every Sunday nights between 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, we talk about the awareness and bring into the visually impaired and blind the world of sighted.
Right.
So that's what it's all about. One of the things I did not address, but you asked me, I went blind due to the word stress. Stress did me in, stress. My eyes are fine. It's the brain that did me in, my brain, because the doctors at 2 different hospitals, one in Pennsylvania, one in Florida, both hospitals that said the same exact thing. I got 2 different opinions, said that I have too much cortisol to the brain. And because of stress, I don't know if people know this. If you read about it now, you can get stress. Your eyesight, your brain, you get stress, you lose your eyesight. You can also get cancer. So I got both of them in my stress. So because the industry I was in, it's very stressful, always yelling, and that's my A personality. So I went blind due to stress. It's very unusual, but I got it. But our show right now is 30% people listening are sighted, 30% is sighted, and 70% is visually impaired and blind. And we're getting more and more sighted people listen to the show all the time. We now have about 1 million people listen to our radio show every Sunday night and growing rapidly. Our listenership is basically United States and Canada. We have other countries listening to us. We're on radio stations right now in the United States, and I'm trying to get some more very shortly in the West Coast. But you can stream our radio show many ways, shapes, and forms through Alexa, the famous computer, those folks who have Alexa in their home, or TuneIn Radio, many different radios. You can listen to our show on your phones, in your radios, all different ways, shapes, and form, listening to the show. So our audience, basically, and we love, is we try to educate, we try to have fun, we try to focus on having people meet other people that are doing something in the community, because too many people that are visually impaired and blind sit there and say, oh, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that because I'm blind. I can't do this because I'm blind. Well, in the world I'm in, I'll tell you this right now. Right now, I'm sick. I've been going to the hospital for the last year because of bladder problems. And I can tell you this right now. Since basically the latter part of 2008, I went blind. And during that time, I can tell you this right now, blindness, except for not driving a car, has not kept me back from doing anything I ever wanted to do. Because I always felt I want to do it, I'm doing it. But I'll tell you what I have now is a handicap. Blindness to me is not a handicap. Yeah, it's because I was driving all the time, so I can't drive anymore. Okay, so it's a problem. But what I have now, that's a handicap. For those folks that think blindness is everything, it's not. Yes, don't say it to me, I wish I had my eyes. I do, but I have something right now. I have to wear a catheter bag every day right now. And that's horrible. It's, let's say, very hard for me to get around. Nothing like blindness, because I'll tell you this right now. If I have to choose the two to get rid of, I'll get rid of my bag, my catheter bag first, because blindness I can deal with. I can't deal with this catheter. So in life, there's always, I'll tell you this right now. A friend of mine, this is a very interesting situation. A friend of mine hurt his finger, from his, right around his fingernail. He had a saw, and they was trying to save his tip of his finger. So I said to him, I feel so bad, you're gonna lose your tip of your finger, maybe. And he says, look, it could have been worse. Maybe I lost my finger. You know what? It could have been worse. I could have lost not only my finger, I could have lost my hand. It could have been worse. I could have lost my arm. And like he said, it could always be worse. It could always be worse. And people don't look at things like that. Now, I will tell you this right now. What I took for granted all the time in my bodily functions, I don't take for granted anymore. I take all those things. Thank God I can go to the bathroom. Thank God I can do this. Because in those days, in the old days, I took everything for granted. So being blind has helped me to grow up. Being blind, I could smell the roses. Thank God I can even become closer with my family and my wife, who I love dearly, who basically is my rock. My wife, she also is the co-host of our radio show. She's the only sighted person on our radio show. We have 7 employees. 6 are blind and 1 is sighted. My wife is the only sighted person. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot my engineer. My engineer, we have a full-time engineer, works for us totally, not for the radio station, works for us. And he's also sighted. But bottom line is this. When you are vision impaired and blind, and you have hope to do always something that you always want to do, never give up. Try to do it. Never give up. Try to do it. And don't always say to yourself the negative. The negatives always get you down. Negative says, I can't do it. Negative, I can't do it. That's not true. It's like this way. We've been very fortunate. We've been on the radio. April will be 7 years. And we pay a lot of money to radio stations to be on the radio. We pay a lot of money. We pay everybody, the engineers, everybody gets paid. And thanks to our, let's put it this way, because we're a nonprofit, we get some grants. We get some gift people, give us some gifts. But most of our money comes from the advertisers and sponsors. And that I go after. And thanks to, we have people in the office who get me the leads. And I'll call them up and talk to them. And that's what they want to be on the radio show. So I my old salesmanship from the garment industry pays on. And I call up and ask if you want to be on a blind radio show. So I spend a lot of time during the day, every day, calling sponsors and ask if they want to be on the show and tell them how much it's cost and see if they want to be part of us. We've been very fortunate. We have some of the same folks who've been on our radio show the whole 6 years. They've been on. I keep on renewing every year. So we've been very fortunate in getting sponsors. We spend a lot of time getting them. So most people can't do that. Most people basically can't go get sponsors because they don't pick up the phone and keep on calling. And today's world, most people don't call you back. So you have to, that's another issue. And when people say, well, Louise or Jerry never call me back. And my answer is, so what? Keep on calling them. Keep on calling them. Don't give up. Keep on calling. So that's basically the Blind and Beyond radio show. Every week is a different subject. Last week, we talked about a subject that the word was embarrassed. Are you embarrassed being blind? Oh, that's a big subject. A lot of people are embarrassed going out to eat. They're embarrassed of eating steaks. They're embarrassed. A lot of subjects. And my answer is, don't be embarrassed because there's nothing to be embarrassed about. My answer to all of you is, I go out to eat. In the house, my wife will only give me plastic cups because she knows I might break the glass. So I will spill things at times, being blind. My answer is, so what? That's the way life is. I make mistakes. I screw up. Even on the show, I screw up. My wife and I are constantly arguing on the radio. That's some of the reasons people like the show. They hear her saying, oh, you can't do this. You can't do that. Because our show is on for 2 hours and it goes very quickly. Thanks to her who plans a clock for 2 hours and it goes rapidly. So we spend a lot of time going, we do things like trivia. 2, 3, 4 times a show, we'll do trivia and we'll play a song and see if you can guess who's singing the song. And if you guess, we give you a $10 gift card from a food place or a CVS drugstore. We do a lot of prizes out during the show. 2 years ago, we gave a prize for 2 people, 4 nights and 5 days on a cruise, all expenses paid going on a cruise. So we give a lot of prizes away. We have a new thing, spin the wheel. You call up, you say, spin the wheel. Sometimes we give you a $25 gift card. Sometimes you might give you a bag of lollipops. That depends what the wheel says. So the bottom line is we entertain, we educate, we inform. And also our mission also is getting people that are vision impaired and blind jobs. We spend a lot of time getting people jobs. So that's what the show is all about. It's a talk show that a lot of folks that are vision impaired and blind will learn. And if you can't take people like myself stressing to you and telling you, get off your feet and go do something. Don't just sit there just because you're blind. Go do something. And that's what the show is all about.
Well, very interesting, Michael. I have a few questions about the show. The first question is, are you located in a radio station studio per se, or you are at home when you are doing the show?
Well, for the first 5 years, we were in the studio every Sunday. And we only missed 2 shows during that time because it was hurricane. Matter of fact, the outside of the building got knocked down. And but since COVID-19, we've been doing it from the house. Only our engineer goes to the studio, and we are doing the things from our home, and they pipe us in from the house to the studio. And our guests call in, they're calling in from their houses, whoever they're at. We have some people calling from Australia, we have some people calling from Denmark. Whoever they are, they call in Everything's live. Nothing's taped. Everything's live. Nothing's taped. I repeat that twice. So the only one that's in the studio taking the calls is the engineer. And if we have a busy night, we will have a person taking the calls on the phone, because we have an open line with 5 phone lines that people call in, and they can call in and talk to us. So right now, till this COVID-19 is over, we're operating from the house and the studios both.
And Michael, when it comes to programs, softwares to understand and learn how to use for a blind individual who would like to do a radio show like you, do you recommend any software that you need to understand, whether it's working at the radio station itself or at home streaming live or something?
Well, let me put it this way to you. You have to surround yourself with people that understand radio. And the first thing I've done is surround myself with people who understand radio. Because the first thing, you have to have a good person who understands the clock. A clock is something that if you have a 2-hour radio show, you have a 2-hour clock, which means everything is spoken for. It's not just going on and wing it. You're not winging anything. You're going on the air, and each time is spoken for. If the show starts at 7 o'clock, from 7:01 to 7:30 to 8 o'clock to 8:15, everything is spoken for. So you have a time when you can do this. You have a time when you can do that. So you have to have a person who's good for that. You have to have a person who in the studio, our engineer, we found out we're very, very lucky. Our engineer is a person, if you listen to the show, is part of the show. He understands. We've had some people, when our engineer got sick, we had some people who filled in, and the show was not as good and it didn't work, because if an engineer just sits there and plays with the dials and does his thing with the dials, it's not the same show. He messes with us. We talk with him, and he is part of the radio show. He contributes to the show all the time, the engineer. So he's an engineer, he's our producer, and he spends time with us. So we surround ourselves with people that understand what we're doing. The same thing about getting sponsors, a radio show. If you're going to go on the radio think how are you going to pay for the show? You have to spend thousands of dollars every week in getting it on the air. You have to have people who want to pay for it.
Right.
Unless you have $1 million in your pocket, you're going to spend, but we don't have $1 million to do it. So you have to have sponsors who you go after, and you spend time getting them, because every week you're looking for people to sponsor. Right now, we're talking to people in 2022 about coming on the radio show and sponsor us, because we take basically the minimum they can sponsor is 3 months, and then the 3 months, 6 months, or a year. So that's what we go after.
Michael, and about software that you need to understand.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that whole. What'd you say?
I said that any software that you need to know how to use as a blind person working on radio.
Well, I can tell you this right now, not being a fraud that I am, I can tell you I know nothing about software. Nothing. Zip. I cannot use a computer. So not because I just never wanted to. I never cared about it. In my day, a computer was not important because I'm an older fella, and I never really wanted to care about software. So I don't know anything about software. I'm surrounded with people that do. Everybody in my organization knows how to do software except me. So my wife is an expert basically in software, but I don't know anything about software.
All right. Michael, is it possible that Lynn could talk about that, or is she busy right now?
No, right now she can't. No.
Okay. So Michael, if someone is listening anywhere in the world, not necessarily in the United States, anywhere, maybe in Canada, in Australia, in the UK, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Mexico, in Colombia, and they say, okay, I like that way of life. I would like to have my own radio show, but be a real radio show. Streaming from the internet is wonderful, but I would like it to be really on radio. What do you think are the steps to take in order to get it on, and how much money do you need to find.
Wait a minute. When you say, wait a minute, are you saying to me right now we're on quite a few radio stations?
Uh-huh.
So, but like for instance, if you're in Montana, there's
Mhm.
no station in Montana, so you have to stream it, and you have to listen on TuneIn Radio or many other ways, shapes, and forms that you can listen to us on the radio.
Right.
Are you saying if they're in Australia, you want them to be in every province a radio station?
If possible, at least.
Well, let me put this way to you.
Yeah.
It would be too costly. Answer that question. It'd be too costly. Nobody I know would have that kind of money. You'd have to be a multi-millionaire.
All right. So let's say.
That's prohibitive.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because no radio station is going to pick you up for nothing. They don't want money. There's no such thing as, oh, you can come on my radio station. Oh, well, let me tell you. I'll tell you one thing. We were offered by what they call public radio. We could go into a lot of radio stations, a lot, 200, 300, 500 radio stations around, but no commercials. No commercials. If there's no commercials, that means nobody gets paid. If nobody gets paid, it's a different ballgame then. And you're not talking about any product, no product. So that means how many things we talk about on the show is products coming
Right.
out, this product coming out, this product. If public radio, you can't talk about products.
Right.
So then half the things we talk about are new products, we discuss new products all the time. So it's not only the money, it's also the products. So the point is, if you're going to be on many radio stations, if they're public, there's no product discussed and there's no money. But if you're going to be on regular radio, which we're on, you have to pay the station. None of them are free. We don't have one radio station that's free. So you have to pay them a lot of money airtime. It could be $100 an hour. It could be $200 an hour. It could be $500 an hour, depending on where you're at. If you are if it's a big wattage, like one of our radio stations right now is 50,000 watts. That's the biggest wattage you can be. They got a lot of money. So the point I'm saying is you have to pay them every week. And when you sign them up for a minimum of a year. So you have to have this money ready to go every month.
Oh.
So when you say many radio stations, well, let's just say you're giving each radio station $2,000-$3,000. Okay. And if you got 100, and then you're looking at minimum of $300,000 a month.
Okay.
A month. And then you're talking about times 12 months. Okay. So then you're talking, that's what I'm saying. When you're talking about having a radio station in every province, no, there is no, it cannot be done that I know to a blind. Don't forget, our audience is 70% vision impaired. I mean, you're not talking a blind audience. A lot of people don't want the blind audience because I'll tell you why. Number one, they want to be able to sell cars. I mean, if you listen to most radio shows, the advertisements are selling cars, they're selling insurance, they're selling a lot of things that people that are blind can't use. So it depends on the items you're trying to sell. And we can't sell liquor because some of our radio stations that we're on right now, one station happens to be one of the biggest gospel radio stations in that area, R&B, black audience with gospel, no liquor, no any kind of alcohol or anything else like that, no drugs, no nothing. So that means we can't sell alcohol in the whole network because whatever you hear in one radio station, you hear them in all. So we can't. Some radio stations can do this. We can't. If our show was taped, we could do it, but our show's not taped. It's live. So what you hear in Florida, you hear the same thing in Pennsylvania. Same thing. We're going to plan to go very soon on the radio to Arizona. It'll be the same thing coming out of Pennsylvania. Same thing in the radio station in Florida. So that's that story.
So Michael, okay, let's say someone in Australia wants to have a radio show to be listened for people in Sydney, only Sydney. Okay, so only one radio station.
Right.
You think it can cost you per week $200, $300, $500, $1,000, maybe more, but that could be it, and you have to pay them every week. So you have to pay a lot of money for 1 year. You need to find the sponsors to help you pay for that, right?
Yeah, and you have to have a listeners first. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? That's a famous expression. Most listeners are great. Sponsors are great. Which comes first, the listeners or the advertising? Because if you're not going to get advertisers if you have no listeners.
True.
And the first thing they want to ask you is how many listeners you have.
True.
If you have 100 people, they're not coming on. So you have to come on. So it depends on what you're going after. And then the other issue too, like we spent all day looking for sponsors. Right now I get paid. I mean, the point is I'm spending all day working on the show. So you're saying, well, work all day for nothing. Well, most people that I know won't work all day, every day, working for nothing. You got to get paid somewhere. You got to live.
Right.
So the point is, this has to be in your budget. You have to be able to pay your engineer. Engineers get their cost. So the point that I'm saying is everything costs money. So when you have a budget, that's how you say on the radio. We've been fortunate almost 7 years to be on the radio. But that means we've had sponsors that whole time.
Michael, how many listeners do you think you need in order to go to a radio station and say, here we are?
Good question. Depends on the area. Depends on the area. In a major city, you have to have at least 100,000. In a small city, maybe you can get away with 25,000. But if you don't have 25,000, you're not going to get anybody to advertise.
It's too little.
Yeah. Oh, unless you want to ask for a couple $100, but what's a couple $100 going to do?
Oh, I see. It's an interesting area.
It's a marketing. It's a marketing thing. It's look, because it goes back to the famous words, because you're blind, it's going to get you nothing. That's a fact. I realized that a long time ago. I'm not embarrassed about being blind. And I use my blindness as a tool. Listen to the word. I use my blindness as a tool because I'm aggressive and I'll tell people I'm blind. A lot of my friends say, oh, you can't say that. You can't tell me you're blind. I said, why not? Aren't you embarrassed? I said, no, not at all. I'm not embarrassed. Why should I be embarrassed? God made me this way. If God wanted me to be sighted, he would have made me sighted right now. God made me, as far as I'm looking at life. We don't discuss politics on the radio. We don't discuss religion. But I'm saying what I believe is a fact. Whatever I have right now, God gave it to me. God made me what I am. I'm short. In the old days, I was 5'5". I don't know what I am now. But God made me short. He wanted me tall. He wanted me 6 foot tall. He would have made me 6 foot tall. I'm 5'5". God said when I was 65, Michael, you're going to go blind. Okay, well, I'm blind. So I look at that. That's how I live my life. So being on the radio, as far as I'm concerned, I was driven this way. He wanted me this way. He wanted me to help the people that are vision impaired and blind. I'm trying to help the vision impaired and blind people to come on the radio and talk their story to the sighted people. I want this show someday maybe be 50-50, 50% sighted, 50% vision impaired and blind, because the point is this way. Whether we're driving the car, we have people who are cab drivers call up and they listen to the show when they're driving people around because they like the show. They think it's a fun show. The point is an educational. The point I'm saying is this way. If you are vision impaired and blind, I want sighted people to know my story. You know, the one thing I still hate to this day, when I go into even a hospital and I'll say in a hospital, pardon me, can you tell me where the men's room is? Oh, it's over there. It's over there. I said, ma'am, I'm blind. Which way's over there?
Right.
Oh, they're famous people. They see me with the cane. They'll say, oh, you have a stick. I said, no, ma'am, it's a cane. Okay. Well, so I said, where's the men's room? And she'll come right back over there. So the sighted people still don't know how to address people that are vision impaired and blind. It's over there. It's over where? It's over there. Okay. We have a funny thing. The last couple of shows we've had, it's very interesting. What does it sound like when you're blind? You don't sound blind. So I'll say to somebody, what does a blind person sound like? Well, because you're blind, you're supposed to sound a different way. Oh, okay. Now I'm blind and my mouth is supposed to be different because I'm blind. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the only reason I might sound different when I'm blind is because I'm shy, I'm being negative, I'm in my shell, I can't do this, I can't talk because I'm blind. Okay, these are all the things that I don't want people on the show like that. I want people to be up. I want people to listen to the show and feel up. I want people to be positive. And when you listen to the radio show, we're not going to talk about negative nonsense. We try to bring people up. We try to get people aware. We try to get people to, oh, I'll tell you something that happened to our show. A lot of people have met other people throughout the country because our radio show, they want to meet different people, and people will call our radio station off the air and say, I'd like to meet Jerry. I'd like to meet Louise. How do I meet these people? And these people talk off the air, whether it be through the computer or other things, they meet people. Oh. That's what the show is all about. It's supposed to be, as I said, educational, fun, informative, but meeting people. It's a way people listen. And that's what the show is all about. Every week's a different subject matter, every week.
Michael, you say you have about 1 million listeners?
1 million plus.
Okay. How do you measure that?
Well, I'm very fortunate. In the blind community, there's no really way to know, but I have people that can tell me, because if you have electronics, like if you're using Alexa, there's a way they can tell how many people are listening. If you're on the radio in a car, they can't tell if you're listening, but there's many ways they can listen. It's like television. They can tell when you turn that switch on a certain station, they can tell.
Right.
Same thing in radio. If you're using your computer, like for instance, if you're using a computer and someone's listening to your show right now, your podcast, you can tell when people are listening based on your computer, based on different things. And you can tell. It's the same way on my phone. I can see how many people that called me today, or how many calls I missed. Well, it's the same thing when you have electronics, whether it be on Alexa, TuneIn Radio, any way, different ways you turn in the radio, we can do that. So it's very, very costly. So I have friends that will do things for me, and on the QT, because I can't afford to pay them, because most people don't know this. The way to get ratings in the United States, I can't tell you about other places in the world, but in the United States, how they get ratings. My old boss on the radio station used to tell me, we can never get a good rating on this show. I said, why not? He says, because it's $250,000 they want that we're going to give the media to give. They start telling you your rating by money. Oh. So if you give them $250,000, then they will spend time to work to get you a rating. Well, we don't have that kind of money. So the point I'm saying is, we have friends who tell us, and nice enough to tell us on the QT, they'll call us up and say, okay, but we only do it a couple of times a year. So all we know, based on what's told to us, is we have 1 million plus. How much more than 1 million plus? We have no idea. As we grow and grow and grow, and people are listening on the radio in the cars, we'll never know. If the people are listening more to Alexa, more on the computer, more streaming, then we know. We can always tell people they're streaming because that shows up. So anything that you're listening that's electronics will show up.
Michael, it's a very interesting story. And also, I know so many people in the blind community who are doing their own show online, and they say, this is great, but I would like to have it on real radio. But listening to Michael, they may say, it's a tough thing to do, of course, because maybe you need a very big listeners base online. And once you have that, you need to know how to pitch what you're going to say to radio stations. You need to know where to look for sponsors and be very patient, persevere, etc. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. And you have proven that it's doable. That's my message today.
Everything in life is doable. The question is, what do you want to pay for it? Time, money. The question is, what do you want to spend doing it? You know, if you think you're just going to, well, I have a good voice, I'm just going to get behind the mic and talk. Forget that. That's not what it's about. That's that's like 5% of the show getting behind. You know what? The least thing is getting behind the mic and talk. That's the least thing. 95% is not bad. So it's driven. First, it's driven by how much time you're going to spend on the radio, off the radio, getting sponsors. And if you think that's easy, trust me, it's not, because the worst community in the world sometimes is the blind community.
Right.
You know, let me just say this way. I'll tell you, here's some facts. They're very interesting facts. Most people, like if you heard of NFB,
Yes.
or ACB, NFB only has 50,000 members, 50,000 members. ACB only has 35,000 members. So between them, they'll have 85,000 people. 85,000. There's 14, and they say there's 14 million people in this country that are vision impaired blind in the United States alone. 14 million people. Well, if that's true, there's only 85,000 belong to ACB and NFB. That's a disgrace. I say that a million people listen to our radio show. Of the million, there's 700,000 that are vision impaired and blind, 300,000 are sighted. Of 700,000, you can say, oh, that's a lot of people, 700,000. That's terrible, terrible. Why? Because when you take 14 million people, just forget Canada, United States, there's 14 million people. That means 95% of the people don't know the radio show, don't listen to the show. 95% of people are vision impaired and blind. Take those numbers and just keep on looking at for numbers for a minute. You say, oh, that's great. That's terrible. That means most of society don't know who you are. We've been talking right now to a company. Well, you'll be reading about it very soon, called Be My Eyes. Did you
I
hear
know
them?
them. I know. I have done an interview with them. Yes.
Okay. Well, you'll be hearing about a partnership between Be My Eyes and Blind and Beyond Radio Show. Be My Eyes, as far as their app, usable app, they only have somewhere, let's say, around 400,000 people that belong to their app. They have 5 million volunteers, but only about 400,000 people using their app. Worldwide, they say it's terrible. So the point I'm saying is you can take anything you want and say, oh, that's great. That's terrible. Locally, we have a company called Lighthouse here in Orlando, Florida. They say 700 people, that's their goal. Their goal is to get 700 people that will go to the Lighthouse. There's 70,000 people in the radius of 50 miles of the Lighthouse. 70,000 people are vision impaired and blind. 70,000 and only 700 going. Listen to those numbers when you think about it. 70,000 versus 700. Those numbers, not 10%, no, 1%. So you're saying 99% not aware, don't want it. So I first learned about numbers, the people that make canes in this country, talking to big people make canes, they'll tell you, most people are vision impaired and blind don't use canes. They're, as they say, go back to the word embarrassed or whatever, they don't want canes. So when you start looking at numbers, if you want to go on the radio, you have to look at it a certain way. I'm driven. I'm an A personality. I'm driven, always been driven. So I use that as sales, talking to get people to come on the radio. And more of our audience, people are driven to us, the AARP people. I don't know if you ever heard of AARP, the organization AARP.
Yes.
Okay. Sponsor our radio show, AARP, CVS drugstores. So it's not just the Foundation Fighting Blindness people there that sponsor our radio show. It's all the people that are interested in people, because most of our audience, 80% of our audience is above the age of 40 years old. So we have very few people listening under the age of 40. Because why? They don't want radio. The kids don't want radio. They don't listen to radio unless it's going to be music. So if you think they're going to listen to a talk show, they're not.
Michael, if someone is listening and says, okay, how much do I need to ask a sponsor to pay for?
That's up to the person, how much. I mean, we have rate cards because we have to go by See, you have to understand something. When every radio show, you can only have so many spots. It's driven by how many spots you have on a show.
Okay.
Because you have 2 hours. So you can't spend a whole 2 hours advertising. There'll be no show.
Right.
You can only spend so much time doing that show advertising. So that means how much charge you're going to get per minute. So it's driven by how much time you're going to get per minute. So everybody wants to go on the show free. So if everybody comes on the show free, you're broke, you're off the air. Bye, you're gone.
Right.
So you can't have a bunch of people free coming on the radio because then there'll be no radio.
Well, I think there is a lot to think about for our listeners because this was important, Michael. Sometimes people say the great things about being on the radio, but they don't say what it takes to make it there for our community, and for everybody, because everybody needs to find sponsors for any show. It's not just this, but I have heard that for years. So it's not new to me, at least. So, Michael.
To answer the one question, I don't care where you are in this world. It's all driven by one word: money. Yeah. Money comes before blindness. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. Money comes before blindness.
It's true.
Because without money, you can't do nothing.
Yes.
So the point I'm saying is everybody wants something free. And that doesn't get you much on radio because it costs money to be on radio. It's not free.
Michael, any final thoughts?
No, I would love the people to listen to the radio show. You might call up and win some money or win some prizes. We're always giving away gift cards, $25 gift cards. We're always giving away free food. We're always giving away a lot of free stuff. So if you know music, if you know different things, so the people that know about life, they should listen to the show. If they want to laugh, if people want to laugh about themselves, I make mistakes all the time on the radio. I goof off, make mistakes. I'm real. It's a real show. And I have to say, oh, I made a mistake. Oh, my mind drew a blank. So if you tape the show, you can cover your mistakes. But on a live radio show that's live, going across the air, many people are listening to it. And one thing about the blind community, they pick up on every mistake I make. Trust me on that one. Every mistake I make, they pick up right away. So if I make one mistake, I don't care what it is, they'll pick up and we'll get calls right away. And that's a funny thing. I'll leave you with this one thought. We have a talk show. If we're talking about a subject that's very dear to my heart, and we're talking about it, now we won't get one lousy call. If I say anybody want to call in and talk about it, I won't get one lousy call. Not one call. If I talk about something really stupid, or we play a song that's really ridiculous, you know the name of the song? Do you know the name of this person who's singing it? The lights will go on like crazy. All 5 lights will go up, and then when someone hangs up, you get another. We had something on the show, maybe it was about 3-4 months ago. It was very interesting. I said, can you name me 3 airlines that went out of business that are no longer here? Well, the first couple people who call in and they got prizes were easy. So TWA, Braniff, Pan American, boom. But after about 10 or more, then it became harder and harder and harder. And it went on half the show. And we had so many calls, it was unbelievable because people were coming up, whatever the subject was, it was a funny thing. And they were talking about all these different airlines, Trump Airlines, New York Airlines, all these different airlines, Hawaiian, I don't know if it was Hawaiian Air. Yeah, either Aloha or Hawaiian, and Pacific Airlines. They mentioned all these cockamamie airlines, Allegheny Airlines, Piedmont Airlines. Anyway, we do all these things. People call in. But as I said, if we mention some serious subject, we don't get any callers. They'll just listen. That's radio.
What's the best way to listen to the show?
I promise you, folks, people listen to the podcast right now. tune us in one time, you'll see it's a different kind of show. We tell it straight, right between your eyes, as I say, right between the eyes. So if you are a person sitting there and say, "Oh, I'm blind, I can't do anything," we're going to get you off and we're going to get you mad at me. We're going to get you to, "Oh, I want to slap this guy in the head." You'll do that because the point is I'm going to make you get off your feet and be aware. Here's someone on the air right now that's blind. Here's some people, because we have co-hosts all the time. We have one co-host happens to be the president of the state of Florida for ACB. We have one co-host who happens to be a blind soldier, talks about the BBA. He's another co-host. We have another co-host who happens to be a singer and makes his living through singing. And he's another co-host. We have different co-hosts. Each week we have a different co-host besides Lynn and myself. So we have a different co-host. And then we have co-hosts on the fourth week and fifth week, we have different people around the country that we have co-hosts that come on and they talk. So we try to get different people. This is one of the things that we get a lot of people in each section of the country. We go after the presidents and vice presidents that come on, and then they spread the word about the show, and then we get them on constantly. So we do a lot of things going after the audience. And that's another thing I do. I call a lot of people at home just to see how they're doing. A lot of radio people will never do that. As I said, we spend a lot of time talking to our audience.
Very impressive, Michael. All right, so if people wants to listen to the show, what they can do?
Well, if they look in their computer on the web page, blind and, don't forget the and, blind and beyond radioshow.org. Go to our webpage. It's rare. We're there right there. As far as you can listen to the old shows, there's over 300 old shows. They're all archived. These are not podcasts. That's radio shows. That after the show's over, we go to our webpage. We put on our webpage the old show. These are all so we have over 300 archive shows you can listen to. As far as the new show, you can listen to. There's a show for listen live. You can do that, or you can listen. There's different ways on the. It tells you whether it be through Alexa, whether it's computers, whether it's TuneIn Radio, whether it's radio itself. All different ways and shapes you can listen to the radio show. We have a lot of people listening in Jamaica. We have people all over in Denmark, people all over the country, world listen to the show, and they all, whether they're streaming it or listen on. And by the way, we don't, as I keep on repeating, the shows are taped. So if you hear something and and you want to call in and discuss it, you're more than welcome to do that. We constantly say our phone number to call in, and you can call in and discuss it with us.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and your very inspiring story. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And for those folks that did not hear everything I said, just look up Blind Radio Show. We're right there in the computer. Blind Radio Show comes right up, Blind Radio Show. Well, you said, look under Blind Radio Show. And it's Blind and Beyond Radio Show. We are the only, I'm going to repeat this, the only commercial radio show as far as in the United States, I know that, but in the world, I don't know if there's any other worldwide, there might be, but in the United States and Canada, we're the only national commercial radio show, it's a talk show on weekly. And the difference between a commercial radio show and a non-commercial show is we have commercials and we have to go by the rules of SEC. So you have to go by certain things as far as the government goes. But as far as we are a commercialized radio show, so we have breaks, and the different radio stations will talk about their radio station. Well, anyway, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And for our listeners, remember, if you want to be on the show, you can email me at lowvisionbureau@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at lowvisionbureau. This is Alvaro from LVB Show saying good night.
Thank you all. Good night.